So you've explained why the West, or at least the leaders of the West, don't like China, and why this anti-Chinese sentiment has become so baked into the US narrative about China and what it's doing. But let's talk about what they are actually doing for their people and why standards of living have gone up so much, why they have so many great high-speed rails popping up, why that so much of the progress on solar panels and solar energy has been driven by China. What is it about their industrial policy that works so differently than what the US, how Western economies are run?
This is so important because, as you mentioned, China is a leader in renewable energy development, right? So it's
the leader by far.
The leader by far. So China installs more renewable energy capacity every year than the rest of the world combines. I mean, it's staggering. And it's not just installations of renewable capacity. They're also by far the leaders in producing renewable technologies. So they're the biggest producer of electric vehicles, of batteries, of wind turbines, of solar panels, of the components of solar panels. Like over and over again, they're the ones that are producing the technologies that the world needs to decarbonize. So not only are they decarbonizing their own economy through establishing massive renewable energy capacity, but they're enabling other countries to do so as well. Now, this raises a question. How is China able to achieve this, given the fact that these are not highly profitable sectors, right? Fossil fuel is more profitable. The West has failed to make these investments because these investments do not align with the interests of profitability. China is not constrained by the capitalist law of value in the same way. Why is that? It's because China has public control over the financial system. And so China is able to direct public and commercial finance towards what is most necessary for their national development objectives, which includes renewable energy capacity development, rather than only directing it towards what is most profitable to capital. This is extremely powerful. Like, try to understand how powerful you can be when you can guide your nation's productive capacity towards achieving these things. You can resolve these problems like that. There's no reason that other countries cannot also do this with the same kinds of results. And the same is true for the high-speed rail, which you mentioned. I think it's so funny because repeatedly in the Western press, there's always these stories in the Financial Times and the Economist. Oh, all of these massive investments that China's making in its high-speed rail network. Doesn't China understand that this is not profitable? And eventually there's going to be a bubble and it's going to burst and the whole economy is going to come down as a result. And this never happens. Why? Because China is not dependent on the law of profitability in order to make investments and do production.
It's like the FT and the economists just don't understand how China's economy works.
They just fundamentally don't understand because they're reading it through their own economies where if you do make massive investments in something that's not profitable, then capitalists are going to go bankrupt and the whole financial system is going to come down. China is not vulnerable to this in the same way. China can direct production to achieve the things that it wants to achieve, regardless of profits. I'll tell you another crucial example. When I was in China the first time, around this time last year, I took the high-speed rail from Shanghai to Beijing. An incredible experience, by the way. Like, by far the nicest train I've ever been on. And as I was zooming through the countryside between these two mega cities, I noticed that they're planting literally millions of trees in rural areas in China. And it raises the question, like, how are they able to mobilize the capacity to do this? I mean, you have to hire people to plant trees, right? It's not profitable to plant trees. It's not profitable to do reforestation, but they can do it anyways because they're not concerned about profitability. They can literally just hire people to do the things they want to have done, right? So there's no reason we cannot do these things. You want to build a public transit system, you want renewable energy, you want to do reforestation. All of this can be done because we have the capacity to do that. We just don't have control over our own productive capacities. And that's what China does have. So the public finance system is one thing, industrial policy is the other, where they simply, like, because China has capitalist producers in its economy, right? But they're able to guide capitalist investment towards national development objectives rather than just letting capital run amok and invest in whatever it wants to do. That's what industrial policy has the power to do. And that's achieved through things like credit guidance. Of course, we should also mention that China has like a large sector of its economy is under public control. So state-owned enterprises are responsible for about a third of China's GDP. And so what this means is that China is always able to do production in those sectors, again, regardless of profitability, if that's the objective for them.
Got it.
Just to kind of illustrate this, I was recently giving a talk in London, and a guy came up to me afterwards, and he's like, "Look, I'm a banker in China, and I actually work for China's biggest investment bank." And he's like, "What you'll be amazed to know is that when we make investments, then profit is probably only number 3 or number 4 on our list of priorities. Our main priority for directing investments in this investment arm is to produce what is necessary for alignment with China's national development plans." That is extraordinary. And we don't have that in the West, where people in exactly his position direct our collective financial resources towards whatever is most profitable to capital.
Yeah, it would almost be a crazy thing to do so within Western capitalism, to be leaving profit on the table, right?
Totally irrational.
Yeah.
It's irrational, right? From the perspective of capital, it is irrational. From the perspective of human needs, it is obviously the rational thing to do.
Yeah. And let's get into the governance bits of it too, because my understanding is that for a while, GDP and economic growth was the main mandate for a lot of local and regional officials in China, that the faster that they could grow the economy in their region, the more advancement they would have in their career in the Communist Party. But that has changed, right? It's no longer the main priority. GDP growth is no longer the main priority for these, like for the government either.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the one important thing to notice is that China, like the Communist Party of China, is not ideologically homogenous, right? Inside it, you have people who are more on the capitalist side and then also more on the socialist or communist side. And there's constant debates between them, right? And that's why, say, during the 1990s, there was, like, in the Communist Party, there was more of a consensus toward free market capitalism. But that has since shifted quite a lot, particularly since 2012. And under the current administration, it's taking things in a much more socialist direction. Now, China is not a fully socialist economy, but it considers itself to be on the road towards socialism. And you can see movements in that direction, certainly now, under the current leadership. But yeah, one of the big changes we've seen is that it used to be that, as you said, the main objective for a lot of policymaking was just accelerate economic growth, which any socialist would immediately think, like, this doesn't really make sense, because obviously the purpose of production under socialism is not just production of anything, but production of what is most necessary for human needs, and we might add ecology. And so simply maximizing GDP growth does not achieve that. And now what we're seeing is much more of an orientation towards producing things that are most necessary for removing people from poverty and for achieving ecological goals and also economic sovereignty. These are the 3 main objectives for the party now, and we can see that they're shifting away from their earlier focus more towards this direction.
Yeah, because they were infamously a very polluted country for a while, right? And so they had to make that a priority to deal with all of that pollution. I mean, I remember I went to China. I got to go a long time ago, so I'm sure it's changed so much since I went in 2007 with my family when I was a teenager. But it was like kind of hard to breathe in Beijing, you know? And so they had to like make that a priority. And I know they kind of, some would say that was for the Olympics, but that like got nationalized in terms of the scope of their ecological mindset, which is like, now the goal is to clean up this polluted river in your territory, right? And that's actually the mandate for your local government. It's not just growth.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was there recently, I had lots of conversations with policymakers and economists in the country, and people repeatedly point out, and this is actually written in national policy now, that the Chinese leadership recognizes that it now faces what they call the 2 fundamental contradictions. One is high inequality, and the other is ecological breakdown. And they're organizing policy around addressing those 2 problems. And so, yeah, we're seeing a lot more focus of policymaking and production around those things. I mean, we've talked about the ecology side, which is just staggering success. But the human deprivation side is also very, very impressive. I mean, there were very high rates of poverty in China during the 1990s. And that has been dramatically reduced through, this is not just through like let's just laissez-faire and let the economy do what it wants to and see if it resolves poverty. No, they had a targeted anti-poverty campaign where they had cadres going into every poor village and town thinking about what do families actually need in order to live decent lives, what can you do to make sure that necessary production occurs, and so they have those things. Healthcare, sanitation systems, nutritious food, et cetera, like producing the things that people need to live decent lives has been a major focus of policymaking in China recently. And so I think that people who visited China in the 1990s or early 2000s, the country has changed so much since then. You talked about pollution in Beijing. There's blue skies in Beijing today.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how much has changed.
It's
It
extraordinary.
must be. I need to go back and see it.